All right, so this story is one of the most dramatic, most devastating family implosions I've ever read about. This comes from a woman, we'll call her Sarah, whose father passed away and left behind a significant inheritance. And the way this inheritance was structured ended up revealing decades of family secrets, lies, favoritism, and resentment that had been hidden beneath the surface. This is one of those situations where money doesn't create problems. It just exposes problems that were already there. And boy, were there problems. This story has everything: secret affairs, hidden children, financial manipulation, legal battles, family members turning on each other, and ultimately, the complete destruction of what was once a close knit family. So let me take you through this entire saga from beginning to end, because it's a wild ride. Let me set the scene for you. Sarah's father, we'll call him Robert, was a very successful businessman. He owned multiple commercial properties and had made smart investments over his lifetime. He wasn't ultra wealthy, but he was comfortably well off. We're talking a couple $1 million in assets. Robert was married to Sarah's mother, Linda, for 35 years. They had 3 children together: Sarah, the oldest, her brother Mark, and her sister Jessica. By all accounts, they seemed like a pretty normal, functional family. Robert was always a bit secretive about his finances. He handled all the money matters in the family, and Linda didn't really question it. This was a generation where that was more common. The husband handled the finances, the wife handled the household. It wasn't ideal, but it's how their marriage worked. Robert also traveled a lot for business. Sometimes he'd be gone for weeks at a time. Again, this was just accepted as part of his job. The family adapted to his schedule. As Robert got older, he started having health problems, heart issues mainly. He had a couple of scares where he ended up in the hospital. He was in his late 60s at this point, and it became clear he needed to get his affairs in order. He told his family he was working with a lawyer to set up his will and estate plan. He said he wanted to make sure everyone was taken care of if anything happened to him. The family thought this was responsible and didn't think much of it. Then, about 6 months after he started the estate planning process, Robert had a massive heart attack and died. It was sudden. He was there one day and gone the next. The family was devastated. Sarah, Mark, and Jessica rallied around their mother. They handled the funeral arrangements, took care of the immediate aftermath, supported each other through the grief. About 2 weeks after the funeral, Robert's lawyer contacted the family to schedule a reading of the will. The lawyer said that Robert had left specific instructions about how the estate should be handled and who should be present for the reading. The family gathers at the lawyer's office for the will reading. Present are Linda, the widow, Sarah, Mark, Jessica, and a few other relatives, including Robert's brother and his wife. The lawyer starts by explaining that Robert's estate is worth approximately $2.3 million after all debts are paid. This includes the family home, investment accounts, his business properties, life insurance, everything. The family is surprised by the amount. They knew Robert was comfortable, but they didn't realize he had accumulated quite this much. Linda especially seems shocked. She had no idea they had this much money. Then the lawyer starts reading the actual bequests, and this is where everything goes completely off the rails. The lawyer says, "To my wife, Linda, I leave the family home and $200,000 in cash, along with the proceeds from my life insurance policy, which total $150,000. I also leave her my personal belongings and our jointly owned vehicles." Linda looks confused. She does some quick math in her head. The house is worth maybe $400,000, so she's getting roughly $750,000 total, which is less than a third of the estate. What about the rest? The lawyer continues, "To my daughter, Sarah, I leave $100,000 and my coin collection." Sarah is stunned. $100,000 is obviously a lot of money, but it seems oddly specific, and it's significantly less than what her mother is getting. "To my son, Mark, I leave $50,000 and my watch collection." Mark looks upset. He's getting even less than Sarah, and he's clearly hurt by that. To my daughter Jessica, I leave $25,000. Jessica's face goes red. She's getting almost nothing compared to everyone else. She looks like she's about to cry or scream, maybe both. At this point, the family is looking at each other in confusion. The amounts don't make sense. Why would Robert leave such different amounts to his children? And this still doesn't account for about $1 million of the estate. Where's the rest of the money going? The lawyer takes a breath and continues. To my daughter, Amanda Chen, I leave $400,000, my investment properties, and the business accounts. I also leave her my apologies for not being a more present father, and my hope that this can help make up for my absence in her life. The room goes completely silent. Nobody moves, nobody breathes. Linda finally speaks. I'm sorry, who? Who is Amanda Chen? The lawyer looks uncomfortable. Amanda Chen is Mr. Robert's daughter from a previous relationship. She is 32 years old. Sarah does the math immediately. She's 34, which means this Amanda was born when Sarah was 2 years old, which means Robert was already married to Linda when Amanda was conceived. Linda stands up, her face white. My husband had another child, a daughter, for 32 years, and he never told me? The lawyer says quietly, according to Mr. Roberts' letter, which he left to be opened after his death, yes, he had a relationship with Amanda's mother, Helen Chen, that lasted several years. Amanda is his biological daughter, confirmed by paternity test. Mark explodes, and this person we've never heard of is getting almost $500,000 and the properties. What the hell? The lawyer explains that there's more. Robert also left specific instructions that Amanda be invited to contact the family if she wants to, and he left letters for each family member explaining his choices. The lawyer hands out the sealed letters. No one wants to open them in front of each other, so they each take their letters and agree to meet later to discuss everything. Sarah goes home and opens her letter. Her hands are shaking. This is what it says. Dear Sarah, I know the contents of my will have come as a shock to you, and I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for a lot of things. You deserved a better father than I was, and I know I let you down in many ways. Amanda is your half-sister. Her mother, Helen, and I had a relationship that lasted from when you were 2 years old until you were about 6. It was wrong. I know that now. I ended the relationship, but I continued to support Amanda financially throughout her life. I paid for her education, helped her with expenses, and maintained a relationship with her, though I was never a full-time father to her. I left her a larger portion of the estate because I feel I owe her more. I was there for you, Mark, and Jessica during your childhoods, even if I wasn't perfect. But I was mostly absent from Amanda's life, and money is the only way I can try to make up for that now. I know this is unfair to you, and I'm sorry. Please try to understand, and if you're willing, please try to know your sister. She's a good person, and none of this is her fault. Love, Dad. Sarah is crying as she finishes reading. She's angry, confused, heartbroken, and also weirdly sympathetic to this Amanda person who she's never met. She calls Mark and Jessica to compare notes. Mark's letter says basically the same thing, but there's an additional paragraph that essentially says, I know I was harder on you than your sisters, and I'm sorry for that. I wanted you to be strong and successful, but I realize now I was just critical and distant. The amount you're receiving reflects not your value to me, but my attempt to be honest about how I failed you. Mark is furious. So he admits he was a terrible father to me, and his solution is to give me less money? How does that make sense? Jessica's letter is the most devastating. It says, Dear Jessica, I need to be honest with you about something I should have told you years ago. When your mother was pregnant with you, I asked her to terminate the pregnancy. We already had 2 children. I was struggling financially and emotionally, and I didn't feel I could handle another child. Your mother refused, and I resented her decision for years. I was not a good father to you because I never fully accepted your existence. As you got older, I came to realize how wrong I was and how much I loved you. but the damage was done. I know I was distant with you, critical of you, and I never gave you the support and affection you deserved. The amount I'm leaving you is small, not because you matter less, but because I've already set up a trust fund for you that will pay out $500,000 when you turn 35, which is next year. I did this years ago as my way of trying to make amends. I hope you can forgive me. Love, Dad. Jessica is absolutely destroyed. She had always sensed that her father didn't really want her, but having it confirmed in writing is devastating. And while $500,000 is a lot of money, it doesn't erase the pain of knowing your father resented your existence. Meanwhile, Linda opens her letter and discovers even more bombshells. Robert's letter to Linda admits to multiple affairs over the course of their marriage. Amanda's mother wasn't the only one. There were others. He claims Amanda is his only child from these affairs that he knows of, but he was unfaithful many, many times. He also admits that he hid money from Linda throughout their marriage. Those investment accounts and properties he left to Amanda? Linda had no idea they existed. Robert had been squirreling away money and purchasing assets without Linda's knowledge. Essentially, Robert used Linda's money, because they were married, so legally half the marital assets were hers, to buy properties that he then left to his secret daughter from an extramarital affair. Linda immediately contacts a lawyer to see if she can contest the will. Her lawyer tells her it's going to be difficult because Robert was very careful about how he structured everything. Some of the assets were purchased before they were married or were kept in his name only, but some of it might be challengeable as marital property. This is when things get really ugly. Linda decides she's going to contest the will. She believes she's entitled to at least half of everything, and she's not going to let Robert screw her over from beyond the grave. Sarah supports her mother's decision. She's angry at her father for the lies and the betrayal, and she thinks her mother deserves better. Mark is conflicted. He's angry about his smaller inheritance, but he's also practical. He thinks fighting the will is going to cost a lot of money in legal fees and might not even succeed. He suggests they just accept it and move on. Jessica is in a dark place emotionally and isn't really capable of making rational decisions. She's spiraling, dealing with the revelation that her father never wanted her to exist. Then, Amanda Chen reaches out. She sends a carefully worded email to all of them, expressing condolences for their loss, which is awkward because Robert was her father too, but she barely knew him, explaining that she never wanted to cause any family drama and suggesting they all meet to discuss the situation like adults. Linda refuses to meet her. She doesn't blame Amanda necessarily, but she can't face her husband's child from an affair. It's too painful. Sarah is curious. She wants to know who this person is. Against her mother's wishes, she agrees to meet Amanda. They meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop. Sarah describes Amanda as looking nothing like their father, but having some of his mannerisms. She's nervous, clearly uncomfortable with the entire situation. Amanda tells Sarah her side of the story. She says her mother, Helen, had a brief relationship with Robert. Helen knew he was married, but Robert told her he was going to leave his wife, the oldest lie in the book. When Helen got pregnant, Robert promised to leave Linda and be with Helen and the baby. He didn't, obviously. He stayed with Linda, but he did continue to see Helen and Amanda periodically throughout Amanda's childhood. He was like a part-time father, showing up for some birthdays, missing others, sending money regularly, but never really being present. Amanda says she always knew she was the secret, the shameful thing her father had to hide. She says it messed her up psychologically, always feeling like she wasn't good enough to be acknowledged. When Robert got sick and realized he was dying, he reached out to Amanda more frequently. He apologized for not being there, told her she deserved better, and promised he'd make sure she was taken care of financially. Amanda thought he was just going to leave her some money. Maybe $50,000 or $100,000. She had no idea it would be $400,000 in properties. She tells Sarah, "I don't need his money to know he loved me, and I definitely don't need it if it means destroying his other family. If your mother wants to contest the will, I won't fight it." I'll give back whatever I need to give back. I just want this to be over. Sarah is surprised by this. She was expecting Amanda to be defensive or greedy, but she seems genuine and actually pretty broken up about the whole thing. Sarah goes back and tells her family about the meeting. Linda is still too angry to care about Amanda's feelings. Mark thinks Amanda is playing them and doesn't trust her. Jessica is barely functioning at this point. Meanwhile, Robert's brother, Sarah's uncle, weighs in. He apparently knew about Amanda all along. Robert had confided in him years ago. The uncle is angry that Robert put the family in this position, but he also thinks Linda is being unreasonable in contesting the will. He says Robert had the right to distribute his assets how he wanted. This causes a rift between Linda and Robert's family. Essentially, Robert's side of the family is mostly siding with the will standing as written, while Linda and her kids are divided on what to do. Then things get even more complicated. The lawyer reveals that Robert had also left money to Amanda's mother, Helen. Not part of the main will, but a separate trust that pays her $2,000 a month for the rest of her life. This was set up years ago and isn't part of the contestable estate, but it's another thing Linda never knew about. Linda feels betrayed all over again. Not only did Robert have an affair and a secret child, he was planning to support his mistress for life. The legal battle begins. Linda's lawyer files to contest the will, arguing that Robert hid marital assets and used community property to purchase assets he then left to a child from an extramarital affair. Amanda, true to her word, doesn't fight it. She tells her lawyer she'll accept whatever the court decides. But here's where the family really fractures. Mark sides with keeping the will as is. He admits it's because if they contest and win, the estate will be divided more evenly, which means he'll probably still get less than Sarah. Under the current will, at least the distribution is clear. If they fight it and everything gets divided equally among the 4 kids and Linda, Mark thinks he'll end up with less than $300,000 after legal fees versus the $50,000 he's guaranteed now. Wait, no. His math doesn't quite work out, but his reasoning is that he doesn't want to spend years in legal battles for an uncertain outcome. Sarah is furious with Mark for not supporting their mother. She accuses him of being selfish and only thinking about money. Mark fires back that Sarah is being self-righteous and that she only cares because she's getting less than Amanda. He says if Sarah had been left the most money, she wouldn't be contesting anything. This fight essentially ends Sarah and Mark's relationship. They stop speaking to each other. Jessica, meanwhile, is having a breakdown. The combination of learning her father never wanted her and watching her family tear itself apart is too much. She ends up having to go to intensive therapy and takes a leave from her job. The one person who tries to stay neutral and kind through all of this is, ironically, Amanda. She keeps trying to reach out, to mediate, to find a solution that works for everyone. But Linda won't speak to her. Mark doesn't trust her. And Sarah is conflicted. The legal process drags on for over a year. During discovery, even more secrets come out. Robert had another child, a son, from a different affair. This son, who would be about 25 now, was also financially supported by Robert but wasn't included in the will because Robert never had a DNA test to confirm paternity and the mother never pushed for one. When this young man hears about the will and Amanda's inheritance, he comes forward wanting his share too. DNA tests confirm he is Robert's son. Now there's a 5th child in the mix. The estate gets even more complicated. The court has to decide whether this newly discovered son has a right to contest the will or if he missed his opportunity since he wasn't mentioned in it at all. Ultimately, the court decides that he can make a claim, which means now the estate has to be reevaluated with 6 potential heirs, Linda and 5 children instead of 5. During all of this, more of Robert's financial dealings come to light. It turns out he wasn't quite as successful as everyone thought. Some of his investments were failing. Some of the properties were heavily mortgaged. The actual liquid assets are significantly less than the original $2.3 million estimate. After all debts are properly accounted for and after legal fees, which are substantial at this point, the estate is worth closer to $1.5 million. The judge eventually issues a ruling. The will is partially invalidated on the grounds that Robert did use marital assets to purchase property that he then left to a child from an affair, which violated Linda's community property rights. However, assets that were purchased before the marriage or that were documented as separate property remain part of the will as written. The final distribution ends up being Linda, $650,000, including the house. Sarah, $150,000. Mark, $100,000. Jessica, $525,000, including her trust fund. Amanda, $200,000, significantly reduced from original. The newly discovered son, $75,000. Nobody is happy with this outcome. Linda feels she should have gotten more. Sarah and Mark are upset their amounts barely changed. Amanda is embarrassed by the whole thing and wishes she'd never been included. The newly discovered son thinks he's being shortchanged. Jessica is the only one who came out ahead, but she's too emotionally damaged to even care about the money. And the legal fees have eaten up hundreds of thousands of dollars that could have gone to the family. After the settlement is finalized, the family basically stops speaking to each other. Holidays and family gatherings stop happening. Linda is bitter and isolated. Sarah and Mark haven't reconciled. Jessica has minimal contact with everyone while she focuses on her mental health. Amanda sends one final email apologizing for everything and then disappears from their lives. The newly discovered son takes his money and they never hear from him again. Robert's brother tries to organize a family gathering to air everything out and heal, but nobody comes except him and his wife. The family is just done. Sarah posts an update about 2 years after the will was first read. She reflects on everything that happened and what she's learned from it. She says the worst part wasn't even the money or the affairs. It was the realization that she never really knew her father at all. The man she thought he was, mostly honest, relatively faithful, straightforward, was actually a compulsive liar who lived multiple secret lives for decades. She says the inheritance destroyed what was left of their family, but the inheritance wasn't really the problem. The problem was all the lies and betrayals that the inheritance exposed. The money was just the catalyst that brought everything to light. Sarah has started building a relationship with Amanda, which her mother doesn't approve of. But Sarah says Amanda is her half-sister, and it's not Amanda's fault how she came into the world. They meet for coffee occasionally and have started to become friends. They bond over the shared experience of having Robert as a father, and both feeling like they never quite measured up to his expectations. Sarah has not reconciled with Mark. She says she can't forgive how he handled everything, prioritizing money over supporting their mother. Mark has apparently moved to a different state and rarely contacts anyone in the family. Jessica has made significant progress in therapy. The money from her trust fund has allowed her to take time off work and really focus on her mental health. She's doing better, but she'll probably never fully get over learning that her father resented her existence. Linda has started dating again, which was shocking to everyone. She says being married to Robert for 35 years was like being married to a stranger. And now she finally has a chance to find someone who's actually honest with her. Sarah is happy for her mother, but also finds it a bit weird. The newly discovered half-brother reached out to Sarah once, asking if they could get to know each other. Sarah politely declined. She says she's still processing having one secret sibling. She can't handle trying to build a relationship with a second one right now. Sarah reflects on what she wishes had been different. She wishes her father had been honest. She wishes he'd told them about Amanda while he was alive so they could have had time to process it before dealing with inheritance issues. She wishes he'd been in therapy to address whatever drove him to lie and cheat for decades. She also wishes he'd distributed his estate more thoughtfully. The unequal amounts to his kids, combined with the surprise revelation of secret children, was a recipe for disaster. If he'd really wanted to make amends and take care of everyone, he should have thought about the emotional impact of his choices, not just the financial logistics. But mostly, Sarah wishes her father had just been a better person. The inheritance wouldn't have mattered if Robert had been honest, faithful, and present. The money issues were solvable. The betrayal and broken trust aren't. Sarah ends her post by saying that anyone reading this should think carefully about their own estate planning. Money can't fix a lifetime of mistakes, and trying to make amends through inheritance can actually make things worse if there are unresolved issues or secrets that will come out after you're gone. She says the best inheritance you can leave your family isn't money. It's a life lived honestly, relationships built on trust, and no secrets that will explode after you're gone. As for whether the $150,000 Sarah inherited has improved her life, she says yes and no. The money helped her buy a small house and gave her some financial security, but it came at the cost of her family, her relationship with her brother, her mother's peace of mind, and her memories of her father. She ends by saying, "If I could give back the money and have my family back the way it was before, even the imperfect, flawed version that was based on lies I didn't know about, I would do it in a heartbeat. But that's not an option. So I'm just trying to move forward, build new relationships with the family members who are willing, and make peace with the fact that some things can't be fixed." It's one of the most honest, raw reflections on inheritance and family I've ever read. The comments on her post are full of people sharing their own stories of inheritances that destroyed families. And it's clear this is a much more common problem than people realize. The lesson here is that money doesn't create family problems, it exposes them. And secrets always come out eventually. Robert thought he could manage multiple lives and then solve everything with money after he died. Instead, he destroyed his family from beyond the grave. If you have family drama stories or thoughts on inheritance and estate planning, drop them in the comments. This is clearly a topic that resonates with a lot of people, and I think there's value in sharing these stories so others can hopefully avoid the same mistakes.